at the top of your notes, you should already have coordinate planes written, correct? Then add today's date, which is 9/1/20. We're not actually flipping the notes pages. We're just starting on the pink page, okay? Okay, are we ready? So, coordinate plane, what it looks like. Okay, what is a coordinate plane? A coordinate plane is the plane made when a vertical and horizontal number line cross. So a coordinate plane is the plane made when a vertical and a horizontal number line cross. Okay, so here's what it looks like. We have our line that goes up and down. This is our vertical. Now you guys tell me based on what you remember. We have an x-axis and we have a y-axis. The one that goes up and down, which one is it? Good, so let's label that our y-axis. The one that goes up and down is the y. So our vertical one is our y-axis, which means our horizontal one is the what? Perfect. So when you have a horizontal and vertical number line that intersect in the middle, does anyone happen to know at the point in which they cross what it's called? It has a name, a very specific name. Any guesses? Abram? No, but that's a good guess. Claire? Nope, that's kind of what Abram said. You guys are not quite. It's a weird word. It's one of those words that's like, unless you know it, you're not going to probably know what it is. Dax? Nope. It's called the origin. So origin, the original, the starting point. Okay, so what, if I asked you what the ordered pairs of the origin are, what would you tell me? Like, what are the points of the ordered pair? 0, 0. So that origin is always at the point 0, 0. Always, always, always. Okay, this line right here, the x-axis going to the right, are those numbers positive or negatives? Good. All of those numbers are positives. When you go to the right, they're always going to be positives, which means if you go to the left, they're always going to be what? Perfect. Then the y-axis. If we go up, our numbers are always, and if we go down, our numbers are always. So that's just kind of a basic coordinate plane. Any questions on that so far? Okay, if we go down below. Now let's take a more closer look at the quadrants. What are our quadrants? Brayden? Okay, so how many are there? 4. Does everyone see that there are 4 sections? That means that there are 4 quadrants. Does that make sense? The question is which one's quadrant number 1? What would you tell me, Leah? What do you think? This one? It is not that one. Addison? Top right. So this one right here is my Q1. It is my quadrant 1. So now the question is, which one's my quadrant 2 then? Dax? Top left. Quadrant 3, Claire? This one? Nope. Which means it has to be the bottom left. And then process of elimination means that the bottom right is quadrant 4. So it starts in this quadrant up here. Quadrant 1 is always what type of numbers? They are both positive numbers. So if you can remember that quadrant 1 always starts with both positive numbers, and then it goes what direction from there? Well, I know, but like, does anyone know what direction this is called? Counterclockwise. So remember that you start in your positive, and then you go counterclockwise. So quadrant 2 has what type of numbers? It's a negative, positive. Quadrant 3 has what type of numbers? Negative, negative. Quadrant 4 has what type of numbers? All 4 quadrants are different. They are not the same. Bennett. No, not to my knowledge. Whoever decided to figure it out, that's what they did. Okay. So if I gave you this point right here, and I labeled it F, what quadrant is F located in? You would tell me quadrant 2, right guys? If I gave you this point right here and labeled it D, what quadrant would you tell me it's located in? Quadrant 3. What about if I gave you that point? Okay, so those are pretty simple, right guys? Pretty straightforward. But what about if I gave you that? It's not quadrant 1. Just say them out loud, guys. It's not quadrant 2. Not 4. But what's the line called? It's the Y. So is letter B, is point B in a quadrant? No, it's on the Y-axis. So is it in a quadrant? Which means if you see something like this, your answer is just Y-axis because B is on the Y-axis. Therefore, it is not in a quadrant. If it's not in a quadrant, you can't tell me it's in one. It's literally have to be inside of it. So if it's on the Y-axis, you would write Y-axis. Brayden.
Whenever I've seen like Y-axis or X-axis, I've always seen people put like a little dash in between them. Do you have to do that, or is it like?
I do, because otherwise you're not breaking apart your words. Does that make sense? You're saying like Y-axis and not Y-axis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because every time I've seen it,
Yep, that would be why. Question, Addison? You sure?
Yeah.
Bennett?
So how do you like write that out?
You would just say Y-axis. So if they say, what's the quadrant that letter B is in, you would say Y-axis. That's it. Sophie? Yeah, it could be. We're not going to see that this year, but as the older you get, yes. But even though if it's still like in the middle of a box, it's still in quadrant 1. Good question. Brayden?
Is there also any origin? Would it just be origin?
Not there yet. What if I give you this point? Call that letter A. What would you tell me for that one then, guys? It's the x-axis. So A is on the x-axis. It is not in a quadrant. Okay, then let's say I gave you this one. What would you tell me for that one? You would tell me origin because that's what it is. C is the origin. Because it's not in a quadrant. All right, questions about quadrants and that sort of thing? Yes?
Is the origin considered like both x and y axis, or is it like its own?
It's its own thing. That's why it has that special name to it.
Okay.
All right, what if, before we move on, I ask you the question, how far apart is D from E? I want to know the distance from D to E. What would you guys tell me? All you're doing is counting from point to point, which gives you that 4 units apart. So they are 4 units apart. Each one is 1 unit, unless it says otherwise. Okay, everyone do D and F for me, and write it down on your paper. How far apart are D and F, you guys? Good, 7. You guys will have to do that on a coordinate plane, and you'd have to do that if they just gave you the ordered pairs as well. So just know when I want distance, it means you're literally counting how far apart they are. Okay? Brayden.
Like, let's say we're going from D to C, but we have to go like,
You will not have to go from D to C because you haven't learned how to go from D to C yet.
Okay.
It's a completely different topic, so we won't do that in 6th grade. So you don't even need to worry about it yet. You'll get there eventually. Sophie. You can say either one, but units is technically the label for it. Good question. Other questions? All right, let's go to the green sheet of paper now. So now that we've talked about quadrants and distances and stuff like that, let's talk about how you plot a point on a coordinate plane. Okay, so we have our steps up here, an example down below. So if we look at number 1, the first step is to identify the x-coordinate of a point. If it's positive, you will move blank. If it's negative, you will move blank. X-coordinate. Is my x the first number or the second number? It is the first number. So when we look at this example right here, which one's my x? The -2 or the -3? So x is the -2, which means the -3 is that is always going to be the order. It will never ever change. And we call that an ordered pair. So if anyone ever is like, what's the ordered pair? It's your x comma y. Now, which one's my x-axis again? That horizontal one, right, guys? And which one's my y? Your vertical, your up and down one. So if I go back up to step number 1, and it says identify the x-coordinate point. If it's positive, you will move what direction, everyone? You will move to the right. If it's negative, you will move to the and then it says, step number 2, beginning at the center of the coordinate plane called the what again? Move according to the x-coordinate. So let's go down below. The x-coordinate is what in this problem, you guys? So if it's -2, this tells us to move how many spaces and to what direction? So where do I start, everyone? Start in the origin. And then what direction am I going? How many spaces? Any questions so far? Okay, back up above. Step number 3. Identify the y-coordinate of the point. If it's positive, you will move what direction? Y-coordinate. Up. If it's negative, you will move. And then it says beginning at the value of the x-coordinate, so we're on that -2. And then you will go from there. So the y-coordinate in this case is what? -3, which tells us to move how many spaces and to what direction. So then you start at that -2 and you move 3 units down. And then you are going to place a point where you stop. And then you are always going to label it. And in this case, it's -2, -3. Questions? Bennett? No. You do not need to draw the arrows. All right, do this one for me, guys. 1, 4. Oh, first question. What quadrant is this point in? Good, quadrant 3. Now graph that point. 1, 4. Graph that point for me. Where do I start? What's the first thing I do? Move to the right once. And then what do I do? And then what? Plot your point and label it. What quadrant is that in? It is in quadrant 1. Good. Do this one for me. 2, -3. Sorry, I was looking at something weird. 2, -3. Plot that point for me, please. Where do I start? What do I do? Move to the right twice. And then what? And then what? Plot your point and label it. What quadrant is that in? Quadrant 4. Okay, do this one. -4, 5. -4, 5. Okay, where do I start? What do I do, everyone? And then what? And then what? And what quadrant are we in? Questions on graphing points? Yes, Braden? You can, but they're going to be exactly the same numbers. So yeah, like the numbers won't change. All right, well, let's reverse it now, guys. What if I gave you this point right here? This time I'm giving you a point, and I want you to give me the ordered pair. So label the ordered pair. What'd you tell me, everyone? Good. You went to the left 2, so that's a -2. And then you went up 3, so that's a +3. What quadrant is it in? Okay, do this one for me. What is it, everyone? Good. You should have 4, 2. We went to the right 4, so it's a positive. We went up 2, so it's a +2. And what quadrant is it in? 1. Okay, do this one for me. What did we get, everyone? -4 what? Good. We went to the left 4, so it's negative. We went down 2, so it's a -2. What quadrant is it in? All right, last one, guys. Do that one for me. What did we get, everyone? Good. We went to the right 5, so it's positive, down 2, so it's negative. Oh, yeah, right there. Sorry. Take your stuff with you, girl. Questions? Is this making sense? Okay, we are going to stop here because this is as far as my other classes go, and because you guys have more time, I don't want to go too far ahead. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to stop this recording